Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is another day that ends in Y, and therefore, of course, we're going to be talking about corruption within the government because the ANC appears to have no idea how to grow an economy. They have no idea how to fight crime, how to lower drug use, how to lower gang violence, how to stop gang violence. They have no idea how to make the country safer, fighting farm murders, what farm murders even. Uh, let's make friends with America. Well, we don't know how to do that because we want to be friends with all of these terrorist states around the world, and America won't let us do that and also be our friend. Of course, when the government says that they want friends, what they're really talking about is they want piggy banks. This is something that genuinely makes me ashamed of being a South African sometimes. You see, because I was brought up, maybe that's just sort of a weird thing in my past, but I was brought up with this idea that one should never beg, right? Like, if you don't have something, you just don't have it. If you don't have money, you just don't have money. And you have to figure out how to work in order to make that money. But begging, asking for a handout, that's just never okay. Especially when your own life isn't good. And all of you know someone like this, right? Someone that you just saw drop insane amounts of money, going out to dinner or went on holiday, and then suddenly they phone you up and they're like, hey, could I borrow some money from you? And you almost want to go, well, I didn't go on holiday last month. I was working, and now you want money from me because you spent all of your money on holiday. What the hell is this, right? It drives people insane. And then you look at things like this with Cyril Ramaphosa going to Japan, and effectively, just listen to this. It'll make your blood boil. Ramaphosa says Japan has been in South Africa and investing in South Africa for years, and China has been our friend as well, and is also investing, and we welcome both because both are beneficial to us. And he adds, we will never say we love you better than the other. We embrace both, and both must invest and deal with us the best they can. So Cyril Ramaphosa literally spent his entire time in Japan begging for money because that's all he does. If you remember back to his meeting in the White House, Trump was accusing him of a genocide, was accusing him of corruption and stealing and theft and being a racist. And all Cyril Ramaphosa is doing is saying, well, when we get into the talks there, we'll be talking about investments and how America can invest in South Africa because of our potential. And I just remember sitting there thinking, bro, like, is it not clear to you that Donald Trump has no interest in investing in your cesspool of a country? You have destroyed it. Donald Trump isn't a moron. He understands what it looks like to throw money into a pit that can never be filled up because you guys steal everything that isn't nailed down. And of course, that's nothing new. Now, News 24 has done a phenomenal job on following Paul Mashatile and laying out the corruption of Paul Mashatile. If only News 24 would do the same type of journalism for Cyril Ramaphosa, we may actually be in a much better and informed state in this country. But I'm guessing News 24 is on the Ramaphosa faction, and obviously Paul Mashatile is not part of the Ramaphosa. And it needs to be understood, the ANC is made up of multiple different factions, and more factions are starting. This is one of the reasons why, if the ANC should ever lose power in South Africa, the ANC will cease to exist immediately because the ANC is not a united party. It is a party made up of multiple factions, each with their own wants and needs. And right now, they're all just suckling at that teat because the ANC happens to be in charge of the taps. As soon as the taps run dry, all of those factions will split and they'll go steal somewhere else because that's all they do. All of the factions are just a bunch of thieves. But okay, so Paul Mashatile unmasked. Effectively, we could go through this entire thing, but here's what you need to know. The Gauteng Partnership Fund, which is literally a fund that gives loans to companies to build mega projects, to build housing, affordable housing most of the time, but also student housing and stuff like that. Basically, anything the government wants to do in terms of investment into properties, that's what they do, right? So you have the Gauteng, sorry, I didn't switch to this page, but the Gauteng Partnership Fund, that's their job. And as you can imagine, here in South Africa, they don't do a good job of this. In no province does this work well. Maybe in the Western Cape, but in no province where the ANC governs does this ever go well. Now, what happened here is that in 2023, I believe, News 24 already started to investigate Nonkwelu Investments. Now, Nonkwelu Investments belong to the son-in-law of Paul Mashatile, Nkeba Nonkwelu, who is married to his daughter. Now, what happened was these loans already date back to 2013, where they started to give a bunch of smaller loans that were meant to be larger loans, but he needed to prove first that he was actually busy doing stuff. And then once he started doing stuff, that's when they'll actually, give the rest of the loan. All in all, it came out to roughly, I believe, something like 30 million rand that's in dispute right now. Should be made clear. That's the money that we know of. That's not the money that is probably paid out already or have just been sort of hidden under a bunch of other stuff, because we have access to the court documents, because the Gauteng Partnership Fund is now suing Nonkwelu Investments for 12.6 million rand, because that's the money that they have paid out. Paul Mashatile, however, denies that he was part of these investigations or in these investments, because these investments were done in 2013. However, when you actually look at the court documents, and this is all in the article, but when you actually look at the court documents, it shows that while the investment started in 2013, the actual money was only paid out in 2017. Now, Paul Mashatile was in charge. He was the MEC for Human Development or for human settlements. In Gauteng. He left and then he returned in 2017. Now, here's where things get really interesting, and what you need to understand about ANC corruption. Just because Paul Mashatile isn't there, Paul Mashatile most likely installed in that department people who were loyal to him, because that's the whole plan and operating sort of operational structure of the communist thieves. They're not the only ones that steal. They make sure that when they move into any department, that entire department becomes loyal to them. And so even if Paul Mashatile wasn't physically there, the money would still have been okayed by him. These cadres would still have answered to him, because remember, all of them are suckling at his teat. He's their access to all of the ANC money. But that's not even the problem, because the actual money that was paid into Nonkwelu Investments bank account was paid in 2017, when Paul Mashatile was the MEC for Human Settlements again in Gauteng. So Paul Mashatile was the one that okayed that loan. Here's the actual father-daughter, Palesa Nonkwelu, or Mashatile, and she married in 2006. She married Nkeba Nonkwelu, who also happened to own Paul Mashatile's multi-million rand mansion in Waterfall. I think it's something like 26 million or something for the house. This is guys. We've covered a lot of the corruption of Paul Mashatile and all of the stuff that he is involved in. It's insane. But effectively, this isn't even a story anymore. At least not in South Africa. We're so used to this. This happens every single day. Constantly, these guys are stealing from the public, because these are public funds. They belong to taxpayers. They come from the national government. A national government cannot make its own money. It gets its money from taxpayers. And before you go, well, the government can print money, that's not how it works. The government can either get the money directly from the public, in which case that's taxes, or indirectly from the public in the form of inflation. Inflation is a tax on money printing. That's how that works, right? So either way, the money always comes from the tax base. It always comes from the citizens, because government itself cannot create money. What's really frustrating about this story is, even though the Gauteng Premier Fund have the ability to take this man to court, even though this is a criminal case because money was stolen, he gave a tender to build public housing in 2013. Not a single unit has been built since. We're in 2025. Nothing has been built. This is criminal negligence. However, the GPF did not file a criminal lawsuit. Instead, they filed for mediation. Mediation is nice, you see, because mediation keeps a lot of the relevant information out of the public eye. The public doesn't have to know what they don't need to know. And more importantly, it allows for the GPF to make a settlement with Nonkwelu Investments that sort of make it seem like justice has been served. And just to give you a little bit of backstory here, or to back up what I said about them infesting every single department that they go to, you have Lebogang Mile, right? Or Miley, who was the Human Settlements MEC at the time, and he referred to Paul Mashatile as his older brother and comrade. So clearly, these guys don't just, when they leave, the corruption doesn't leave with them. They make sure to install people to take care of their interests once they're gone. Now, let's just quickly look at how much money South Africa loses annually. This is taxpayer money, by the way, annually due to corruption. And all of these are based on actual statistics. 27 billion rand in 2017, 50 to 100 billion rand in 2023. This was based on the Auditor General of South Africa report. A 414 billion rand from 2018 to 2020. Again, based on PricewaterhouseCoopers. 23 billion rand in 2015. This is hypothetical because it's based on KPMG's analyzing using Transparency International, CPI, and IMF GDP data. Another 710 million annually in 2015. This is according to the Ethics Institute of South Africa. Then you have 35 billion average, right? Annual average over 15 years up to 2025. And this was done by Corruption Watch and National Treasury, and 100 billion in 2023, Tracet and other reports. We're being bled dry by thieves and criminals like this man. And don't think for a second that Cyril Ramaphosa isn't exactly the same. He is. He's just part of a different faction. His faction steals, Paul Mashatile's faction steals, every other faction steals. And they're ultimately, this is why the ANC is continuously facing more and more almost meltdowns now, because as the party continues to lose power, these factions are getting more and more desperate to steal because they realize the party will soon be over and they don't really know how to stop the party from being over because all they're really interested in is stealing as much money as is humanly possible. And that's where we are now in this country. I wanted to bring you guys the story because it's important. It's important to make sure that everyone in the country knows what is happening. And hopefully people can wake up and realize that this party, the ANC, is beyond evil. There is nothing good about this party. There is no reason to ever vote for this party. They will continue to rob you blind. They will continue to steal everything you give them because it's all they know. It's all they have ever cared about. When they got into power in 1994, there may have been some who genuinely wanted to govern this country and make this country successful. But those people were surrounded by a group of people who only wanted to enrich themselves. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of this story. Is there something I missed? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, if you feel like more people should have access to the content I make, please consider hitting the like button, hitting that subscribe button, and leaving a comment. A massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons and the YouTube channel members for continuing to support this channel and the efforts that we go through here to try and bring you the news as honestly and rationally as is humanly possible. To become a patron, just click the link in the description down below or hit the little join button right below this video. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. A peace.